So welcome. This is my first time doing a top anything list, but I've seen a lot of people doing end of the year top 10 lists. So I figured let's jump on and do a top 10 list myself. But as a solo gamer and you coming to my solo YouTube channel all the time, seeing my face and nothing but my face, I figured it would be fun to bring in some more faces and let them talk about playing games by themselves as well. So solo gamers are friendly as well. So I brought, as I said, I've got two guests. So go ahead and introduce yourself, guys. Let them know who you are and what you are. And yeah.
I'm Allison. I'm from Better Half Reviews, but I also do my own little solo half reviews section on that page. I don't know. I love games. So, and if I'm playing with people, cool. If I'm not, that's also cool.
Very nice.
Awesome. I'm Allie, and I am from Family Meeple, primarily on Instagram. We also have a website, Family Meeple, where I write reviews and top lists. Mostly, I've done a top 5 games that teach math. Most of my gaming is done with my daughters, who are 7 and 5. And my husband is not really a gamer, so a lot of my evenings are solo gaming because I like it a lot more than he does. So, yeah.
Cool. It's interesting that you said to teach math. I'm a science teacher myself, so using games to teach things is pretty cool. So I'm happy to hear that.
And
so,
I actually went to school to be a math teacher, so there you go.
Perfect. That's cool. So we're going to do things a little bit differently because as I was sitting down to do my top 10 list, I realized that a lot of the games I wanted to talk about are games that aren't out yet. Due to the coronavirus stuff and being locked in the house all the time, a lot of publishers have been putting their games up on Tabletop Simulator or Tabletopia or other online methods so that people can get a chance to try them out since there haven't been conventions this year. So I've been playing a lot of games that aren't out yet, and I didn't think it was fair to put those in a top list of the year. So what we're going to do today instead is we're going to split that into a top 5 list of games that we've played that are currently out, and then a top 5 list of games that are coming out in the future. Whether or not we've played that would depend on who we are and which of the games we've played. But those are the two sort of vague, broad categories that we're going to be talking about. It's also worth mentioning the top 5 of games that are currently out are not necessarily games that have been released in 2020. These are just games that have been new to us in this 2020 year. So with that being said, I think we'll go right ahead into the first list, and we'll start with number 5. My number 5 game for the games that I've played this year that were new to me and that are currently out is a very small 18-card micro game called Squire for Hire. So in this game, you're basically, well, in the solo version of this game, you've got a stack of cards, and you've got 2 cards that you can see that have sort of a grid with some items on it. And in the center is the other side of the card, which tells you sort of a condition that you have to meet based on the cards in your own sort of tableau area. And if you can meet that condition, you take one of those 2 cards that are showing, and you have to fit it into your own player area by placing an item on one of the cards you took on top of the cards that you already have. So it's a spatial sort of puzzle, fitting in these items, building this player area in front of you, and scoring points at the end of the game based on what you've been able to fit into your bag, as the story says. You're basically collecting items to build an adventurer's bag in order to be hired as a squire for a night. So at the end of the game, you're scoring based on what's in the bag and how those items are touching. There are certain combos that each of the characters will score for. And I just have a lot of fun with the spatial puzzle. And with an 18-card game, it's very easy to bring with you and take it wherever you go.
So is that one where you try to get a certain score, and then you're like, oh, you're this type of squire?
Yes, I believe it's 20. It's just one level, and you have to get over 25 points to be hired as the squire. But there are, I think, 6 squires in the base game, and there's actually a second course that they just released that adds a little bit more twist to the rule, and that has another set of squires. And I don't have it yet, but there's also a sort of pack of extra squires, and each of the squires has different combinations that they score bonus points for as well.
Nice, that sounds fun.
All right, Allison, go ahead.
Okay, so my number 5 is probably the newest release that I have, and it is a puzzly game called Calico. So I've only played it recently, and I really like it. If I had played it earlier, it would probably be up higher, but I feel like it's not fair to put it up any higher because I'm still new to it. So if you don't know anything about Calico, it's this cool little game where you're trying to like build up your own quilt and to get cats to come lay on it and earn buttons. But everything about the game is beautiful. Like you have these different colored tiles and they have different patterns, and you're trying to match them up to meet certain goals on your board. Um, but you're placing them one at a time and things are rotating out in the solo mode. So you pick a tile and then one of them gets trashed and then things get reloaded up. And it's really hard depending on what your goals are. And I'm one who's like, okay, yeah, I gotta do it all. And so you try to plan it and put down different colors with the matching patterns. And then you're like, oh, shoot, I'm getting down to the wire and I'm not getting the pieces I need. So then you kind of have to like get to that point in the game where you're like, okay, what points am I going to try to get because I can't get all of it. But I love this game. It's fantastic components. And I like that it's just like you can take your time. Obviously, you can play it solo mode and I don't have to worry about anybody else. And I can just sit there and have analysis paralysis forever and think about, okay, can I get this color? Where should I put this? But yeah, I love how it plays and the tiles feel really cool. And plus, there's a double layer board. So you got me at that.
Uh-huh.
So that's my number 5, Calico.
Nice. Actually, I just had a chance. I was actually doing an advising session with one of my students online. And after we had our session, we decided to play that on Tabletopia, and we had a blast with it
Nice.
as well. But can you tell me what, I haven't had a chance to play it solo yet. How does the solo work? What are you doing differently in the solo game?
So in the solo mode, like you can play the game as normal, like regular multiplayer, but I kind of said it before, like when you pick a tile from the general selection, you pick one and the one that's furthest down gets trashed and then you kind of reload it. And the really
Mm-hmm.
cool thing about it, and I haven't dived into all of it, they have like campaign modes. So you have like different levels that you can try to achieve and try to see if you can get to this type of master quilter or whatever. Like there's pages of it of things that you can check mark off, and I haven't gotten that far, but it's going to be a really good challenge. I'm just definitely not a master quilter yet to even try some of those.
Sure. Sounds fun. Thanks.
That sounds like a really fun one, Allison. I haven't tried that one either yet, but it looks gorgeous.
Yes, do it.
All right, so my number 5 is a game from 2016, and I'm sure that a lot of people have played this one if they play solo games. It is Terraforming Mars. And this was a game I had no interest in at all when I first started seeing it earlier in the year. And I was like, that game doesn't look that good. I don't know if I'd be into that. And they had it on sale on Amazon. I was like, well, that's a really good price. Let's give it a go. People seem to like it. And it is so much fun. I love the challenge of figuring out when you should buy those cards and when you should just let it go and pass them up, because they're really expensive. You have to pay just to draft it, and then you might not use it at all. And in the solo version, it seems even tighter because you're responsible for terraforming the entire planet by yourself within a set number of rounds. If you don't get that planet terraformed, you lose. It doesn't matter how many points you earned or how many cards you played. That's it. And so that's my number 5. I love the challenge. I do like playing it probably more on the app version because it's faster and it's not so much to set up. But there's just those times where you want to pull that game out and feel those cubes and shuffle those cards. And I upgraded mine with the broken token insert. And so I have the nice dual layer player mats that replace those really bad ones that are in the base game.
Yeah. This is one I've heard you sort of have to upgrade.
Yeah.
2 things about that real quick. So you said that when you're playing it solo, you're terraforming it all by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So do you feel like you're playing the movie The Martian and you're growing all these potatoes? If you get that quote. Sorry, that's what I thought of.
No, I haven't seen that movie, but I mean, it's definitely challenging. You have different tactics, I think, in the solo game versus in the multiplayer game, because you're really trying to get the terraforming done. That's like your key element there. You're not worried about like, I don't want animals on my planet. I don't really care about increasing a lot of my production of like the titanium and those special ones. I really just want heat and I want water.
Yeah, this is one I need to try out for real, like a physical game. I've only played the app version of it and only once or twice. I think this is a game that if you've played it physically first, the app was probably easier to understand. But for me, there's so many different things to look at and click back and forth between on the app that it's a little bit hard to keep track of what's going on just playing that way.
I haven't played it at all. I'm in that boat of like, it just doesn't like, it seems like a fun idea, but I'm like, it just doesn't look that great. And I ended up choosing underwater cities that some people were comparing, but not quite. I went that route. So I haven't gotten around to terraforming Mars yet.
Yeah, I think they're pretty close, and underwater cities is on my wish list.
Nice. All right, then moving into number 4. My number 4 is a game that came out this year from Renegade Games. It's called The Search for Planet X. It's a deduction game, which sort of blew my mind that there's a deduction game that I can play as a solo gamer and basically get the same experience from. If you don't know this game, this is a game, it uses an app. And basically, you've got this board of the solar system that's cut into quadrants, and each area has something in it. It could be a comet, it could be a planet, it could be an asteroid, it could be the planet X that you're looking for, it could be an empty zone. And basically, you're doing sort of a logical puzzle to figure this out. If you remember back when you were kids and there were those puzzles like Steven is next to the tallest person and Jessica has a dog, and you have to figure out what is the order of the shortest to tallest and what animal does each person have or something like that. It's that kind of a game. So this area has to be next to something that has this, or so you figure out all these rules based on different actions in the game and try and figure out what's in each section on the board. But the cool thing is, in most deduction games, whoever figures out the puzzle is the winner. But in this game, you're getting points based on predictions that you're making about what's in each area. And if you make the predictions sooner, you get more points than if you make the predictions later. But if you still make the predictions later, you're getting points for that as well, just not as many. And yes, whoever finds Planet X gets a large chunk of points at the end, but it doesn't win you the game automatically. If you've understood everything there is to understand, but you were either late or didn't find Planet X at all, you could still potentially win from points that you've accrued throughout the game. I mean, with the solo, it's just you versus the AI, but it plays out almost exactly the same way, because the app is not only answering the questions that you're asking it, but it's also telling you what the AI is doing. So the AI is kind of working like a player when you would be playing in a multiplayer game. So I thought it was really cool that I could sit down and play a logical deduction game by myself as a solo gamer. And then also as a science teacher, this is going to be one that I'm really looking to get into my classes to use as sort of an observation, understanding rules kind of game. And I think it'll work really good in the classroom as well.
That's pretty cool. Does it have like high replayability value, do you think?
Yeah, because it has the app sets up the puzzle every time. So it's not based on a card deck. So the app can build completely different, rules that connect all the different objects and set the puzzle up completely different. So when you play, it gives you like a string of letters. So if you were playing multiplayer, you could give that string of letters to everybody you're playing with, so you're all in the same game. But then every time you play, it's completely generating a new game. So I think it's got a ton of replayability.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
All right, my number 4. You guys were all like awesome and looking out years and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it came out sometime. My number 4 is a real-time game, and it's a tile laying game. I usually don't go for real-time games, but I have a few exceptions, and this is one of them. It's Sorcerer City from Druid City Games and Skybound Games. I was a skeptic of this game when it first came out because like the cover looked really cool, and I'm like, sweet. And then I see what's inside. I'm like, it's just these random square tiles with colors. Great. But then I got it on sale, and I'm like, I'll just try it. And I love it. It's a really good challenge because what you're trying to do is build up the best city to gain the most victory points. But you have different colored tiles, and the way that you connect them together with different goals that come out as you're laying the tiles down give you different like monies or magic that you can convert into stuff. And I always forget what the other one is, the red one, like power or something like that. But It's such a fun game to play. And when you're playing it solo mode, you have to deal with more monsters, and the monsters can mess up your city and they get shuffled into your deck. And so as you're playing it out, you have to like put a tile down first before you can draw out another one. So you're chancing and trying to think quickly and not have the monsters mess up your tiles because they mess up your points and your scores. But it's not just that, but on the side, in between your timed sessions, you're supposed to try to like buy more tiles to gain more stuff into your stack to get better points. You also end up putting extra monsters on the tiles that are on the general store. And if all of that fills up, you lose the game. So you have to buy more tiles that have monsters in it. So your solo deck has a bazillion monsters in it, and it's so crazy. And you expect to do like really good scores, and you're like, no, there's like 15 monsters in here. So it's always an experience, and it's crazy, and it can be stressful, but it's like a fun stressful as long as you win. But I really enjoy it, and it's quite fun.
Yeah, that's one I now that you said this, I do want to try out because I had the same thing. I saw it. It was just a bunch of colored tiles, and I wasn't sure. I actually didn't even know this had a solo mode, so that's another thing. The one thing I did know is that the coins they've got, I don't know, you probably don't have the metal coins if you just bought it now, but the metal coins for this look really cool. They like stack
I
up in a
know.
different, yeah.
I've almost bought them so many times because I'm like, I don't need them, but I need them.
How does the real time work in the solo mode?
So in the game box, they give you like a little sand timer, but I don't use that
Mhm.
because you get so into it. You're like, when did it stop? They have a free app you can download, and I really like how it works. You can choose like easy, medium, and hard mode. I think medium is like the standard, but you hit play on that and then you take your round, and it plays like music for you. And that's kind of where the stress comes from because as it's getting closer and closer, it's like moving up the beat, and you're like, oh no, I know the time's running out. And so, yeah, I highly recommend if you're going to play this game, get the timer because it's stressful fun.
Let's go.
That's awesome. All right, cool. My number 4 is one of the most recent games on my list. It's from 2019, and it's Parks from Keymaster Games. And this one, honestly, I just love the artwork, and I love worker placement games. So this is like already up my alley. And then the solo, it plays so smooth, it plays so quick. You can get it to the table, played, done in 30 minutes. If you've had kind of a stressful day, you can pull it out. It's super relaxing. You just move your little hikers across that path and pick up all those amazing little resource tokens, pack it back up or play a second round, and it's just wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, this is one I've seen lots of pictures of, and it looks beautiful every time I see it. It comes with, there's like a game tray is like shaped like a log or something that the pieces
Yes.
go into.
Yes.
Yep. It
But
comes
yeah,
with
I
game
haven't had a
trays.
chance to try this out, and I'd love to try this one for sure.
Yeah,
I've tried it a few times. I like it. I've also heard that there's a different solo mode on Board Game Geek that some gamers actually like a little bit better. I just haven't tried that one yet. Have you?
Yeah, I haven't tried that one out yet. I am looking forward to getting the expansion and seeing how that changes things, where you can do your camp outs and add a couple of different elements in there. The solo can be somewhat frustrating when you've got all of your resources ready to visit one of the parks at the end, and then that park ranger gets to the end first and takes that card, and you're like, now I don't have what I need. But yeah, it's really fun.
Cool. I'll definitely check that one out. All right, so the next one for me, number 3, was sort of a toss-up whether I was going to put it at number 2 and number 3. I did end up putting it at 3 because of the solo, and I'll explain that in a second. But my number 3 is Tiny Towns. So this is a game, if you don't know, where you're, well, depending on which mode you're playing or how you're playing, you're drafting resources in some way. In the multiplayer game, you're taking turns calling out a resource. In the base solo game, which actually is not the way I enjoy playing it the most, is you've got a set of cards and you're choosing one and you put it to the back of the deck. So you're sort of building the order of the resources so that later in the game you can kind of guess what order they're going to come back into. The way I play it is a town hall variant, which is you draw 2 resources and then the third resource you choose, and then you draw 2 resources and the third resource you choose. But basically you've got a grid. I believe it's a 4x4 grid. and you're placing the resources as you draw them. You have to place every time you get a resource. And based on patterns of these resources, you're building buildings. And those buildings get placed in one of the spaces where those resources were. And each time you play, except for the main cottage building, all of the other buildings will change every game because there's a set of cards, and each building type has a handful of different cards that match that building. So there's a ton of variability that way. The spatial puzzle in this game is really tricky, but really, really feels good when you get it to work well. I did just recently review the newest Villagers expansion for this, which adds little villager meeples that you can use to activate new abilities and sort of help you place these resources and build these buildings. But the reason I put this at 3 and not number 2 is because the solo mode at the end of the day is sort of a beat your own high score. There is a score list that you're going to compare to. But what I did say in my recent video for the expansion is that when you start adding in expansions and adding in these other things, it's going to change how your score is. Sometimes you're going to score really high. Sometimes you're going to score really low, depending on which buildings you're playing with. And that sort of takes away from that score list and whether your score really means anything. It's still a ton of fun, so I still do play it solo. But it's not the greatest solo experience because there's not something you're really competing against in the game.
I would have put this on my list if I had learned about it this year. And I like that
Sure.
same variant. It's a lot more fun. And like, yeah, I don't like that you're just trying to get to a certain score or whatever, but I enjoy like the thinkiness of it and trying to figure out that puzzle. So yeah, that's definitely a good one.
Mm-hmm.
When you have games like that, Carl, do you set a baseline score for yourself where you say, this is the score I have to get or I lose? Or do you just go off of the like tiered levels?
Well, it depends on how the game is set up, because some of those tiered levels start at a certain level, in which case that is sort of the win-loss level. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't really care so much. I mean, this game specifically to me is a puzzle, and I like to see how well I can. For me, it's almost more, can I fill in the whole grid? Can I put all of the buildings in there? And if I can, how did I do? Because as I was saying, depending on the buildings that come up, the scores are going to be fairly swingy anyway. And unless I'm playing with the same buildings every time to see how well I can score, it doesn't really mean anything anyway. So it's just more about the fun of playing the game in this one. And actually, it's worth mentioning, I discovered this game. Well, I picked it up in a trade originally, but I discovered the fun of this game because AEG was actually doing every day at noon Pacific time, so around 3 o'clock our time, a live game of this every day. And they were doing the Town Hall variant just like I've been playing. And basically, if you had a copy of the game and you watched the live stream, you could play along with them. And it was a ton of fun. That's how I ended up getting the expansions for it, because I won a contest while I was playing one of those. And it's been great. So, and they're supposed to be doing it again in the next year. So hopefully, if anybody out there is interested, definitely check that out.
All right. So my number 3 is a game that I feel like most people who have been in the hobby know about. It's a flip and write game. And it's like one of the few that I've played because I was a huge skeptic of the whole roll and write, flip and write genre. This was the one that I was like, okay, fine. This is fine. It's good. It's Cartographers. So again, it's really just one of those puzzly games. So the point of the game is you're trying to build up the best city, and not tiny towns. This is a city or whatever. Anyway, you're a cartographer and you're building out a map. But as you're playing the game, you have a couple different goal cards that you're going to be using to score, but you only score 2 of them at a time, and that kind of rotates. And as you're playing the game, you're flipping cards and you have to make a decision right then. Are you going to put out the village, or are you going to use the forest? And they have kind of different like Tetris-y shapes, and you're trying to squeeze them onto the map and get different goals. And it's just a really great challenge. And I like that. I mean, you can play it on pen and paper, and there's also an app that makes it look really fancy. And if you're really cool, you can use color pencils and markers to build up your beautiful looking map. And I don't. I should. But as I'm playing the game, it gets like messier and messier. Like I start out drawing trees and houses, and it's like, I think this is it's water, right? But yeah, it's really fun. And I like that you have stuff working against you when you're playing the game with the little like goblin cards. So there could be negative points if you're not careful, and you have to like watch out for that. So yeah, it's just a lot of fun, and it's a little challenge, and I like that there's different ways to be able to play this game.
For sure. This is one I almost wish they sold little like stamps, like because they have those tiles in the app version that they could just give you a stamp that you could stamp in each square, and it would look really nice at the end of the game.
I feel like I
actually
might
saw somebody
mess that up.
online. Somebody online is 3D printing tiles to make their own version of the game, which was really crazy. But yeah, no, I agree. This is a great game. The solo is pretty brutal with the negative, the sort of goal points that you have to subtract at the end of the game, but it's still a ton of fun to play.
I know the first time I played it solo, that kind of threw me off. I was like, oh, wow, I got a really great score, where it's like 90 something, like for a beginner. I'm like, cool. And then I'm like, oh, I got 5.
That's not negative, at least.
No, those negative scores are brutal. I don't own cartographers, but I have played the app, and oh man, it just kills you. You're like, I did really, really poorly. I have a negative 5. So that's one where I really would like to play it in a multiplayer and see how it feels, because those negative scores, I'm not big on that.
That's true. I try not to get hung up on the score. I pay attention to it before it subtracts everything. I'm like, I'm just gonna go with that score.
Right. That's the score I would have had. Right.
Yeah. If I was playing against someone else, this would have been really good.
And this one, actually, I don't know if you saw, the Kickstarter just ended a little while ago for Cartographers Heroes, which is a whole standalone expansion plus, I forget how many, but like 4 or 5 new map packs as well that add tweaks to the rules as well that I'm very excited to see more about.
Almost backed it.
I'm in for $1. We'll see. I may finish in.
I figure I'll see it on retail, and I'll just deal with not having all the extras.
All right. Well, my number 3 is another game from 2019, and it's one of the more recent games that has entered my collection. It is Fantastic Factories from Deepwater Games and Manufactory Games, I think is who made it. But it is a really fun engine building game. And so every turn you get to draft one card, and you can draft the card for free. And so you take your card and it goes into your hand. And the solo variant, you play exactly the same as the multiplayer game, which I love, because not only do you not have to learn new rules when you're playing solo, but it's also a great way to learn the game for when you do have other people over. You can teach them because you've played it several times. But you'll draft the cards into your hand, and then the cards are both factories that you'll build into your tableau that you're building out, but you also have to use them as your currency. So if I'm building a factory into my tableau that has the wrench symbol on it, I have to discard another card that has the wrench symbol on it. And so you're constantly battling between which of these cards do I actually want to build, and which of these cards do I draft just so I can build another card that's already in my hand. It also includes dice rolling and placement, which I'm kind of on the fence on in some games, because there's that luck factor and you're like, I can't control that. But there's a lot of elements in this game where you can kind of mitigate that, or the dice are almost always going to help you in some way. For the solo variant, the AI is basically drafting cards using dice rolls to tell you which card they're going to take out of the display. So you never really know which one they're going to take out. It could be one right off the top, could be one that you can see. And so they'll take those out of the display based on the dice roll, and then they'll add up their points for those. They'll also manufacture goods based on dice rolls. So it's, there's a lot of luck in there. So it can be challenging to mitigate that. Sometimes the AI scores really well just because they grabbed a bunch of the monument cards and they scored really high. And then other times they don't score as well, but it's really fun. Again, it's a quick play. It's one that you can grab, get to the table after the kids are in bed, and just have a good time.
This is one I've been interested in for a while. And yeah, for me, the dice is a big thing. I like dice quite a bit, so that brought me in. It did look a little bit sort of design-wise or graphics-wise a little bit simpler than I would have hoped, but it's definitely one I've heard lots of good things about, so I definitely want to try it out.
Yeah, it's one that I actually won in a giveaway from
Oh, nice.
Game Foundry, and they included game trays, so that's been super
Oh, very
nice.
cool.
It
Okay.
even
Nice.
helps
Yeah.
the setup even more because everything
Sure.
goes in with the trays. You don't have any baggies; you just grab it out. And it also has dual layer player boards, so your dice fit
Ooh.
right in there really nicely.
Great. Nice.
I know when games have like nice components or like little add-ons like that, you're like, I don't, even if I don't like the game, I'm like, yeah, I'm interested.
Yep.
All right. So then my number 2 is a game, another 18 card small game. This is from a company called Button Shy, whose games are all 18 card games and come in wallets. I discovered them this summer. I was looking for something to sort of wind down at the end of the night. Discovered that you could get a bunch of them print and play, and I started learning how to print my own cards. And with 18 cards in the game, it was super easy to print. And then I sort of fell down the rabbit hole and joined their Discord channel and just sort of hung out there a lot and discovered lots of cool games. So realistically, there could be a ton of these Button Shy games on my list today. But I went with the one that I've been playing the most. I don't know if it's the best one, but it's definitely the one I've been enjoying the most. And that's also because there's an expansion out for it and several more expansions coming. And this game is Skulls of Sedlec. So this is based thematically on a church. I don't exactly remember where, somewhere in Europe, that many, many, many years ago, a blind monk dug up all of the bones in the cemetery there and used the bones to sort of build this cathedral. So all of the decorations and the chandeliers and the altar and everything is made out of human remains that they dug up there. Anyway, that's not important because the game is not a macabre game in any sense. But basically what you're doing is you've got, in the solo game, 4 piles of cards face down. And on your turn, you can choose to either take a face-up card and place it into your area where you're going to be building a pyramid and then some specific feature depending on which game you're playing, which solo, I guess, scenario you're playing. And the other option is you can turn over 2 of those cards. But if you turn over 2 of those cards face up, you then must place one of the cards that you've just turned over. So you can either, like I was saying, choose to place one that had already been turned up from a turn before, or risk flipping over new cards and having to place one of those. And there are 6 different skulls, I believe, in the base game, plus then 1 more in an expansion. And I actually play tested a wide range of more expansions with more skulls coming, but each skull has a unique scoring condition. So for example, the royals score based on any royals or peasants that are below it in the stack or in the feature that you're building. The criminals score if they're next to priests. The priests score 1 per level that you've built. So they've all got unique scoring conditions. So it's all about, again, spatial puzzles seems to be my theme for this year, but placing things in certain ways that they score off of other things. And it's, again, 18 cards, so it plays real quick. I should also mention the solo game. In addition to the different shape feature that you're building each time, on the back of those feature cards is also a special scoring rule. So for example, the peasants usually score 1 point wherever they are in your feature or in your stack. But one of the special scoring conditions says that for every level that doesn't have a peasant, you lose a certain number of points. I think it's 5 points. But if you can have peasants in every level of your stack, then you get an additional 5 points on top of that. So you're really trying to put them on every level. So each time you're playing the solo game, you have a different sort of twist on the rules that changes the scoring in some way as well, in addition to the different shape that you're trying to build. So it's just a whole lot of fun.
Nice. I haven't played that one. I haven't played any of the Button Shy ones because I usually steer towards like box games, and so like I haven't quite dived into that, but I keep hearing about them, so I'll have to try them one day.
Yeah, I've been very, very pleasantly surprised with how much game they can fit in the 18 cards.
That's pretty cool.
I'm with you, Allison. I haven't tried any of the Button Shies yet, but there's several of them that look pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm. All right, so my number 2 is one that I played towards the beginning of this year, which seems like so long ago. It's Paladins of the West Kingdom. So this one's a little bit more of an intense solo experience because there's a lot of setup. And this one is quite thinky, but when you're playing the game, if you've played it, you have like your own personal board with tons of little buildings and spots for meeples to go on, and then the AI has their own board with a slightly different setup, and then they have a little solo deck. And as you're playing the game, like you take your turn and you're gonna place meeples out, and they take their turn. They flip over a card, and depending on what card you flip over, that denotes what their action will be. And if they don't have that option available, there's a list of like how you kind of go throughout that to play their following action. But it's a challenge and it's quite fun. And I found, even though sometimes I like to play a little bit lighter games for solo, this one was just so intriguing that I was kind of addicted to it for a while. And if possible, I would leave it set up down in the basement because at that time my son was never really going down in the basement. So I was like, let's just leave it set up here. And so when he would be taking a nap, I'd like hurry down and go play a solo game of Paladins while my husband's sitting there working next to me. I'm like, I'm having fun. How about you? But if you played any of the West Kingdom games, they are gorgeous to look at. And so that's also another avenue. Like I love looking at it, I love playing it and all the different color pieces. It's just a great experience.
This is one I'm dying to get played. First off, the artwork, you're right. The Miko's artwork is always a lot of fun. And these Garfield games have always really cool twists on worker placement mechanics, and the AI decks and all of them seem to be really, really nice. I tried to set this one up on Tabletopia a while back, and there's just so much going on that I wasn't even going to try and do it.
I tried when I started getting onto Tabletopia. I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll do that so I don't have to set it up. And I was like, after a first couple moves, I'm like, no, just no. There's too much. And something else I forgot to mention, I love that there's so many different paths to victory. So you can play a completely different game back to back, just depending on what you go for.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
That's awesome. I haven't tried those yet. All right, so my number 2 is the oldest game on my list, and it's from 2015, and it is Viticulture from Stonemaier Games. And this is one that I picked up early on in the pandemic, and I went, a game about wine. I like wine. And so I picked it up and just went with the Essential Edition to start out with, see if I liked it. Played it solo, had my glass of wine there while I was playing solo. It's so like engrossing that I would find myself, I'd played through the whole game and my glass of wine was still sitting there and I hadn't drank any of it because I was just so into the game. I really enjoy the fact that the AI is like zero maintenance at all. You've got that deck of cards, you flip it over, they block those spots, you can't go there. That's it. And it requires no extra reading of rules. I don't have to go back and check and see what are they going to do on this turn. I just play my game like the regular game, block up those spots, and do my best to reach that 25 victory points, which at the beginning seems absolutely impossible. You're like, I am never going to get here. I'm earning no points in the first 3 years, but getting those visitor cards and being able to use them effectively is really fun. It's a nice little puzzle how to use those cards. And then I did end up picking up the Tuscany expansion for Viticulture as well. So I have that now. Only downside really is that it is pretty massive. It's a bit of a table hog, but it's gorgeous. I love artwork by Beth Sobel, so it's definitely one that's top of my list.
Yeah,
that's one I haven't played.
Game. You need to.
I do like when solo modes have like not a lot of upkeep. That is so amazing where you just do one thing and you don't have to think about it.
None. Flip a card, block those spots.
This is one of the first sort of heavier style. I played this long time ago. One of the heavier games that I first started picking up, and the theme in this is so well connected to the actions that even there's a lot going on, it all makes sense. That you plant the seeds, you grow the grapes, you crush the grapes, you make the wine, you sell the wine, and it all flows perfectly well.
Flows, get it.
My sister just gave me the metal coins for Christmas, so I need to get this back to the table and get it played again. But I do not have Tuscany, and I've heard lots of great things, particularly how the board splits into 4 seasons now instead of the normal, and it makes things even more interesting, I guess. And I really want to try that expansion out quite a bit.
Yeah,
Question.
The solo one.
Oh, go ahead.
The solo on Tuscany is really challenging when you get into the area control on the other side of the board,
Oh,
which
right,
is
yeah.
in the
Mhm.
original. I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to control like any of these areas. The AI really does take over pretty quickly. But yeah, I have the metal coins on my wish list, and I have they have a stemless wine glasses that say viticulture on them. Those are also on
cool.
my wish list.
Actually, one more thing about the solo is just to mention that the solo in this is brutal, even in the base game. You didn't really mention it, but it's worth mentioning that in addition to hitting those points, there's a hard time limit. You're given a certain number of rounds to get all of this done, and that time limit comes fast. It's really, really fast.
Yeah, that's true.
If you know like Zippo about wine, is there a bit of a learning curve?
No, not at all.
No.
If you know
Okay.
anything about worker placement games or that kind
Okay.
of, no, it's get resources, use the resources, and then sell what you've used the resources to.
Got
it
it.
makes
Okay,
perfect
because I'm
sense.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
Not
No,
at
you
all.
can still play it.
Cool. Then my number one game of the year that I played this year is actually another brand new game. This is from a company called Uproarious Games that probably isn't all that well known. I played a game of theirs a long time ago called Word Domination, which is a cool sort of area control spelling game kind of thing. But they were sort of off my radar for a while. And then I heard about this game, and this game is called The Grand Carnival. And this was just released by Uproarious Games, and it is great. Again, here we are with a sort of spatially based puzzle kind of game. This is one of those games that uses polyominoes, but this is the first game that I've seen use polyominoes in the way that it does. So basically, you've got a certain number of rounds, and in each round you've got, it's basically an action selection game. You've got 5 different meeples that are assigned number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And there are 3 different actions you can do, which are build a foundation tile, build an attraction on the foundation tile, or move guests through your park. And the only thing that matters is you've got those 5 actions, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and those numbers dictate how that action works. So based on, if you use a 5, you can take any of the foundation tiles. If you use a 1, you can only take one of the face down from the stack. Same thing with moving the guests on your board. If you use a 1, they move 1 space. If you use a 5, they move 5 spaces. So you've only got 5 actions, and you have to decide which sort of strength you're using for which of those actions. And you're scoring points based on sort of different attractions. You have to have one of each attraction or you lose points. If you have a certain number of each attraction, then you get extra points. Every time so you've got 2 guests that come into your park, and every time both of them have left the entrance to your park, you place a carnival barker on the board, and he sort of blocks spaces because nobody can walk through him, and he doesn't do anything except at the end of the game you get points for it. So the guests are walking up, and every time they stop next to an attraction, you add a ticket to the attraction, and the tickets are scoring points. So there's a bunch of different ways to score points in this. And I did mention the polyominoes. The cool thing about this is in every other polyomino game I've ever played, it's always been about the efficiency puzzle, about how do you fit those polyominoes together to fill your board. This is sort of the opposite of that. So first you have to place foundation tiles, and the foundation tiles are 2 by 2 squares. And some of those squares are green, which is just sort of a walkway through your park. And the other squares are construction area. And the shape of the green and the construction in that square is different for each of those foundation tiles. So first you have to lay down enough of those foundations to build shapes that the polyominoes will fit into. But then on top of that, you don't want the polyominoes to be close to each other because you need pathways for the people to walk in between the attractions. So you're trying to build sort of, it's still the efficiency puzzle, but you don't want them to lock together. You want a path that goes through, because if I can get a guest to stop at a place where more than one attraction is adjacent to it, I place tickets on all of those attractions.
Nice.
But if I block it off, then they can't keep going through the park. And at the top of the board, there's a big top, like a carnival tent. And if you can get them into there all the way at the top, then you score points for that as well. So you need to find a path straight through, and it's a whole lot of fun. And in the solo game, the scoring is super low. You're basically getting 1 point here, 1 point there. I've had scores between like 4 and 9. So every point really means something. It is a beat your own score, or one of those compare it to a level thing. But there are also 3 cards in every game that if you achieve a certain condition, you get the card that sort of breaks a rule in a certain way. Like usually the guest can't walk through other guests, but there might be a card that lets you do that. Or there's a card that lets you place tickets at diagonals rather than just orthogonally adjacent to the guest. And in the multiplayer game, you're sort of competing to who can get those cards faster. But in the solo game, after the second round, one of those cards is removed every round. So you need to complete those quickly before they disappear. And if you do, that's 1 point for each of those cards you get, as well as giving you the bonus. So it's giving you, right, well, it's giving you different ways to break the game rules, which means different paths that you're going to try out every time you play the game. Plus, there are conditions you have to meet to get those cards. So they're giving you different sort of interim goals during the game that you have to hit as well. So every time you play, there's a slightly different puzzle, and it's a whole lot of fun.
That sounds really cool and a lot. I feel like I'd be playing that game and just be staring at it for a long time, but still having fun.
It's surprisingly, easier than it sounds. But yeah, there's definitely a lot to think about.
That's pretty cool.
That sounds like one to check out for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So my number one, I thought about trying to change up the order so that I didn't have some stuff back to back, but there was just no way around it. So my number one is Viscounts of the West Kingdom.
I'm very happy to hear
that. It is just, it's phenomenal. So if you've played like Architects and you've played Paladins, you are so primed to try Viscounts because it's got a different combination. I mean, it's its own game, but it has like different combinations kind of meshed together, and it just feels like the perfect ending to this trilogy. And it's different from other games I've played because you're playing in kind of a roundish hexagonal board, and you have a Viscount that you're moving around on the board, and depending on where you move it, you can do certain actions. If you're on the outside, you can build a building or do some trading. If you're on the inside, you can move workers into the castle, or you can buy manuscripts. And not only that, you have your own little deck building aspect. And so you can try to build up your deck to be, really high with nobility, or you can be, I forget the word for it, but like a rogue and go for the dark side. But there's so many choices and so many avenues to try to win the game. But you have your own personal board, and there's like a whole mini game happening on that, as well as the game board. And so it's just so fascinating to try to play. And when you're doing solo mode, each of the player boards that come with the game, if you flip it over, it's a different AI with a different focus. So that makes it really cool to try out each of the different solo modes. And there's a deck that comes with the game. And if you've played any of the other solo games like Architects, it comes with two different solo decks. There's a scheme deck and then a future scheme deck. So as you're playing the game, some of the future scheme deck cards get added to their cards, and it kind of ups the difficulty of it. And for each of the AIs that you're playing against, there's a couple cards you take out because they focus more on like a certain aspect, like people in the castle. So they'll have a little bit more of that as opposed to some other games or other cards. And it's just so fun to play. And I love that. I mean, yes, there's still a bit of setup, but it's way less than Paladins. But yeah, it's a game that I feel like I could just keep playing, and I haven't cracked all the different strategies because there's so many different ways you can try to go for it. But I will admit the best way to play it is to get all your little people in the castle, because when you're playing the castle, you move them up. And when you get like 3 people in one section, then you move one up and move one over and one over. And it's just like so satisfying to like move all your people around on there. But yeah, it can be a pretty tough game to win solo mode, but it's definitely a joy.
I'm very happy to hear that this is better than Paladins, because this is the one I've been most excited about of the 3 of them, and I'm very excited to try this one out.
Great. Okay, so my number one is from 2017, and it is from Pencil First Games, and it is another game that has illustrations by Beth Sobel, and it is Herbaceous. This one I absolutely adore. It is so small. It is so portable. The solo is very simple. You're basically playing the same game. You're splitting your deck exactly in half. So you can have half of that deck. You're going to play through that. It's going to take you probably 5 to 8 minutes to play through that half of the deck. and you're going to see what you can get as far as your score. It is another one where you're going off of how high can you get that score, but I just set myself a bar and I'm like, I need to get this much or better, or we're just going to call that a loss. But then the great thing is because you're using exactly half of the deck, you can then just turn around, grab the other half that you already separated, and play again right away. Because it's just a deck of cards, you can take it anywhere. I've taken it with me when I take my girls to their lessons. They do their lesson. I sit in the back of the car and play Herbaceous, and it's just wonderful. The artwork is great. I'm looking forward next year to the Pocket Edition, which I backed on Kickstarter, so I can get it again, even more portable, smaller deck of cards.
Nice.
Very cool.
I haven't
Yeah,
tried
this
that
is
one.
Me neither. I've seen it around, and the artwork, as you said, is gorgeous. Have you played, just quickly, I talked about Button Shy a minute ago. Beth Sobel did the artwork for a game called Tussie Mussy, which is a flower game that's really, really fun. That's actually designed by Elizabeth Hargrave, who did Wingspan and Mariposas. That's definitely another game that you might want to check out if you're a fan of Beth Sobel's art.
Yeah, I think in the Button Shy line, Tussie Mussy is probably top, and then Sprawlopolis is from them as well, right? Yeah, those are the two that are my
top.
top.
That's real hard. Yeah. Great. All right, so that's what we've got for the top 5 for games that we've already played and then are already available for you to go out and get right now. So let's switch over to games that are coming up. This is going to be a fun one because anybody who's watching, these are games you can look forward to. They're not out yet, and you should definitely keep an eye out for them. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in. I will start at number 5, is a game called Streets. This is the follow-up to a game called Villagers. I haven't tried Villagers yet. I do really want to try it. But Streets I've played a couple times now on Tabletopia. And basically the way it works is that you're building streets. There are tiles or cards that are buildings on them. And each building has sort of a different type of people that will visit that building. So it might be hipsters or parents, or I don't remember what the other ones are, but they're all themed for different types of buildings. And then each of the buildings scores in a unique way. So it might be a certain amount of money based on how many people of a certain type are in that street, or how many of a certain building type are in that street, or combos of 2 different building types in that street. So basically every time on your turn, you're placing a card down or a tile down in such a way that it connects to another card to extend the street, keeping in mind how these scoring conditions work with the other buildings that are in that street. But you can also rotate the card 90 degrees so that it's facing the end of a street, and that sort of ends the street. And as soon as the street is capped off both ends, then all of the buildings on that street score based on whatever the scoring condition is. So they're scoring based on the scoring condition, but they're also scoring based on the number of those meeples of any type that are on that specific tile as well. And then after everything's scored in that street, all of the meeples that are on that street will then relocate to buildings that are connected on other streets that haven't been scored yet. And they're always going to move to buildings that match the color. So you can sort of set it up in such a way that when you trigger that scoring, you can move all of those meeples onto your own building, so that when you score those buildings again later, you get a ton of extra points because all of these other meeples have moved over to your buildings. This game would probably be a little bit higher on my list, but I put it at 5 because the solo game, you're playing against an AI, but basically the AI is just playing the top building tile from the stack. So you have an idea of what they're going to be playing next. But when they place it, they're always placing it, obviously, in the way that maximizes scoring at that moment. So it is a lot of fun, but it almost feels like I'm playing two-handed, like I'm playing myself and my opponent and trying to do best for both of us. And it's just a little bit more work than I really want to have in a solo game, but not too much that I won't play it, because it is really, really fun, and I am definitely looking forward to this one.
So another spatial puzzle game, huh?
Yeah. Do you notice a trend?
Nah, and that's totally fine. So my number 5 is probably one that I know least about with the solo mode. It's one that I haven't played yet, and it's a Kickstarter. I think it's going to be fulfilling middle of next year. And it's from Elf Creek Games. It's Merchants of the Dark Road. So this game just looks phenomenal. So you're out on the dark road and you're trying to carry goods and get out and around and deliver them. But there's so many things mixed into this game that it just sounds really interesting how they pieced it together. So there's a rondelle system, you have your own player board that's a little wagon, and you have some polyomino shapes that you're trying to fit in that is your cargo for the game. And you have different animals like horses and stuff to help you. And it just sounds like really interesting how they took all these different types of components and mechanics and they're like, here's a game. And you're like, okay. But the art is done by Andrew Bosley, and that's already like a big hit for me because I love all the art that he does for games. So if it looks appealing and it has like a good throw of mechanics and stuff, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm interested. So when this came out on Kickstarter, I was like, can we back this? I wish I had backed it to get all the cool coins because they were like the coolest coins I've seen, but I didn't. But I'm still super excited for this game and interested to see how the solo mode is.
Yeah, this is one I really wish I had backed it. This is the game that made me discover Elf Creek, and this game, as you said, is gorgeous. The deluxe version of this game was even more ridiculously gorgeous.
Yes.
But yeah, Elf Creek seems to be on a roll. I haven't played any of the games yet, but I really want to. Atlantis Rising looks great. Honey Buzz, which I've seen pictures of all over the world right now, it looks amazing as well. I really want to try some of their games.
Yeah, this will be my first of the Elf Creek, but I've been looking at all of their games and just like drooling over myself because they're so beautiful looking. I almost added all of those, but I didn't.
Yeah, agreed. All right, my number 5 is from Starling Games, and I came across this one because I've been really interested in Everdale, but I want to get the collector's edition, and I don't want to spend what it will cost to get it right now, so I'm waiting to see when they have their next Kickstarter. But in the meanwhile, they're launching Flourish. And so number 5 is Flourish from Starling Games. And what I loved about this one is when I was watching all of the playthroughs, it feels like Seven Wonders in the way that you're drafting cards left and right, but you're also building out your tableau. And so you have this little puzzle that you're putting together. And the artwork is gorgeous. Apparently, I really like flowers and garden themes. But yeah, this one just looks really great. It's another one that looks like it's going to play really quickly and not take up a lot of table space and have a very easy AI to manage in the solo mode.
Yeah, this one looked really great. I backed this like immediately.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next one is again an 18 card game. Again, button shy. This is.
Is it spatially? Spatial puzzle?
No. Well, yes, kind of. There are parts of that. This is just left Kickstarter. It's a game called Ugly Griffin Inn. This is the second in their Simply Solo line that they've started with designer Scott Alms that you might know from the Tiny Epic games. This is an interesting one. It's a sort of fantasy themed game, but it's themed around a bar and an inn, obviously the Ugly Griffin Inn. And basically every round you're going to add cards to the bar, and you're going to have to choose somebody from the bar to move into the inn. And the hope is at the end of the game, when you've gone through the entire deck, you have at least 7 people who are in your inn. But the point is, each of the characters has a unique thing that irks them while they're in the inn. So for example, if there's too much beer in the inn, they'll leave. If there's not enough beer in the inn, they'll leave. If it's too noisy, they'll leave. And they all have unique things that trigger this. And the cards in the bar all have symbols at the bottom. So I was mentioning noisy or things like that. In addition to the unique things that irk them while they're in the inn, if there are ever 3 or more of the same symbol at the bar, that's a secondary condition that irks somebody in the inn. So anybody who has that condition, if you have 3 or more of that symbol at the bar, they leave as well. But a lot of them, when they leave, things happen. So for example, when the dwarf leaves, he jumps out the window and lands on somebody outside the inn, so you discard another card from the deck. Or the ranger, when they get irked, they shoot an arrow out the window and it irks to somebody 2 stories below them in the inn, and they leave, or they get irked. And so yes, there's some spatial puzzle based in if this person's at the top floor of the inn, they're not happy. Or if this person, like I said, the ranger irks the person 2 floors below. So there is a little bit of spatial, but it's more about sort of minimizing risk with those symbols and with the different conditions that irk the patrons in the inn, and it's hard, but it's fun, and the flavor of how these characters get irked and why they get irked and what happens when they get irked, it's really, really cool theme as well.
That sounds really interesting. I feel like they need some happier guests.
Yeah, I'm curious who did the artwork on that one.
I don't know, but it's really, really nice. The characters are very, very unique characters, and it's cartoony and really cool.
All right, my number 4 is one that I've only played the multiplayer version, but I absolutely fell in love with it, and I'm really excited to see what they do with the solo mode. So for anyone who likes Everdell or likes family weight games like Wreck Raiders, mix those together and you have Creature Comforts.
Yay.
This is from Kids Table Board Gaming, and oh my goodness, I was blown away with this. The Kickstarter just finished a couple weeks ago, and it has adorable critters. It has fantastic artwork and a really cool twist on mechanics. So you have 2 of your own dice. You roll them. Everybody rolls them. Well, I mean, for solo mode, whatever. I don't know all the rules. But when you're playing multiplayer, you roll your 2 dice, and then you use those dice, and you're going to place them out or place out workers based on what you got. Because on the board, if you have like 2 2s or a run or 3 4 5 or whatever, you can get different things. So you're not sure what everything is yet because you've only rolled 2 dice, and then there's a generic like 4 or 5 dice. You roll those after you've placed your workers. So you roll them, and then that's what's going to be your total of dice to use, your 2 plus the generic ones. And depending on where you put your workers and what's rolled, you may not have everything work out for you. But what I like about it is even if some of the numbers don't work out for you, there's some ways to mitigate that and get something in return. But you're trying to collect resources and trade things in to make the coziest little home for your critters before winter comes, and you work through the seasons, and there's so many different ways to play this game and so much replayability with the weather cards and little critters that come visit and all the cards that you can collect and so many other things. I was blown away. And then finally, when the Kickstarter came out and they're like, we have game trays and we have these tokens, and I'm just
Custom everything.
Can I have it now? I'm all in. But it's something else that I really like about Kids Table Board Gaming is they try to make the price reasonable too, and they give you a lot of game for what you're paying for too. So look for it.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you included this on the list. Yeah, Helena Capel and Kids Table Board Games are doing great things, and I was very excited. I only played 2 rounds of the multiplayer game, and I haven't had a chance to play it solo either, so I didn't have it on my list. But it deserves to be on a list, and yeah, I look forward to this a lot myself.
Yeah, I agree for sure on that. Kids Table Board Games is on my shelf back here. I don't know if you can see it. We've got Wreck Raiders, we got Fossilist, the deluxe edition, we've got Haunt the House, and nice. I was a day 1 backer for Creature Comforts for sure. It's actually on my honorable mention for this list, and the only reason I say that is because they're shooting for December of 2021, and I have a feeling it may end up being 2022 before that gets to my table.
No.
But you're hoping it actually is December, because I am with you. I cannot wait to get that and check that one out. All right, so we are on number 4. My number 4 is from a designer that has already been mentioned, Scott Alms from the Gamelink Games. I am really excited to get my copy of Tiny Epic Pirates. And this was another one where I went all in on this. I'm getting the game mats, I'm getting the skull dice, I got the expansion, I'm getting all of the things. Pirates are awesome. I'm a huge fan of Pirates of the Caribbean. This feels very in that vein. And then, as mentioned in, I think, your earlier one, Allison, it has all of the different pirate player boards. When you flip them over to do solo mode, you have different solo modes that you can play and different combinations that you can put together to really be able to play that solo over and over again without having it feel like it's getting stale and you're playing against the same AI every single time. So that's my number 4, Tiny Epic Pirates.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm curious about that one. I didn't look into it enough, and I think I probably should have. I've had sort of mixed feelings about some of the other Tiny Epic games, but this one is looking very nice, and I need to look more into that one for sure. All right, number 3 is a unique one. This is actually from Shem Phillips of the Garfield games that Allison has been mentioning, but it is not a Garfield game. This is coming from a new publisher, I believe, called Arcus. And this game is called Shelfie Stacker. I don't know if you've heard this. I haven't had any real dice games on my list yet, but I do really love them. Sagrada and Role Player are 2 that I reviewed this year. They weren't new to me this year, so I couldn't put them as new to this list, but Shelfie Stacker is, and actually I think I like Shelfie Stacker more than both Role Player and Sagrada. And basically what this is it's themed based on building a board game collection, and the dice are representing your board games. So the pips on the dice are actually board game, like the edges of board game boxes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 board games. And your player board is basically a Calyx shelf. So you have to put these dice onto your board, and each column of your board can only have a certain color. Yes, and they have to increase as they go up the shelf in number. And then there are certain patterns of colors that you're looking to score, or the first person at the table who has a certain number of a certain color, and things like that. But the way that the game plays is you're not just rolling dice and taking dice. You've got a set of cards, and each card is a character with a unique power. And you're playing a card face down, and all of the opponents are playing a card face down, and you turn them over. And then based on the number of your card, you draft dice in that order. But then, so the low number cards are going to get you draft dice early, and the high number cards are going to give you really cool powers that you can use. And those powers don't have to happen right away. You can sort of, once you've used that card, store it and use it anytime in the future from that point on. So for the solo mode, there's actually 2 solo modes. When the game first launched on Kickstarter, there was only one, and it was just to beat your high score. And I played it, and it was fun because the game is fun. But again, I wasn't a huge fan of that. But then, as Shem Phillips does with his Garfield games, he created a Shembot for this game as well. And so now there is a deck. Well, it's not even a deck because it uses one of the regular player decks, but there's an AI bot in the game that you're competing against. And then you can use some of those scoring goals from the multiplayer game. And I've played it that way now on Tabletopia a couple times, and I really, really like it that way.
Nice.
And one more thing is it's gorgeous, super, super, super colorful, poppy, cartoony kind of art. And I really, really like the way it looks.
Sounds like a much lighter version to save your back of organizing your games.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that should be said. If you can't fit it onto your shelf, there's like a shelf of shame that you have to put the games on, and you lose points at the end of the game for anything that's on your shelf of shame, which is kind of fun.
Nice. I currently have a shelf of shame then. It's a little bit of a mess.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're moving on to games that I have played. So number 3 on my list is a card game, and it's kind of like a legacy / campaign game, and it's Deck of Wonders. So in this one, you are trying to battle against different villains because so you stole Fate's deck of cards, and Fate is mad at you, and all these people are trying to get after you because they want that deck of cards because it's really powerful. And when you're playing the game, you are like drawing out certain cards and you play them down in front of you, and you're kind of doing like offense defense against the villain, but the villain always has like that upper hand, so it's like a real challenge to try to defeat them, and it only gets harder and harder and harder. We did a review of this on our channel, and so before that happened, I played through like the whole campaign really quickly, and it was super fun and super frustrating sometimes. But there was like some moments where things were revealed, and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me! There's no way I'm gonna be able to do this." But it's a game that has a small footprint. You can play it in like 10 or 15 minutes. So it's super appealing as like a quick game that you can fit in, especially with like kids and everything. Or if you don't have a lot of time, you're like, well, I'll just play a game of Deck of Wonders. And as you're playing it, you only need certain cards for different rounds and everything. So it's very portable But yeah, and I am super excited to get the final product because the art is so amazing. It's by Lauren Brown. She's on Instagram, and like her art is fantastic and really brings to life this world that Dennis Feria has created in this game. It's so cool, and I'm super forward looking. Or I can't even talk. I'm so excited. I'm really looking forward to this game and seeing like what it really looks like and playing through it again. Even though I've already played the campaign, I'm sure there's going to be some tweaks and stuff, but it's really cool. And I'm not often one who just goes for card games, and this one is pretty awesome.
Yeah, the art is what caught me on this one as well. I definitely want to check this out. It's kind of cool that they could do sort of a two-player combat game that works as a solo game, which is neat. Is this one something about you flip when you play your card, you flip it, and then that becomes the enemy's cards or something?
Kind of. So yeah, I forgot to mention that's a really cool part of this game. Each card has like a good side and a villain side. So like you rotate it. So whenever you flip it out and it's your card, you put it on your side, and it has slightly different powers than if it's flipped out and put on the villain side. And yeah, there's so many different combinations, and it's crazy. And you have to be super strategic as you're doing things, like even when you discard stuff. So yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but just
Yeah.
play it.
That one sounds really exciting. I'm gonna have to check that one out. All right, my number 3. My list so far has not included a lot of abstract strategy games, which I really enjoy, but I don't know that I own a lot that have any sort of solo mode to them. Like there isn't really a solo mode in things like Azul, which I love playing, or like Onitama. You can't really play that by yourself.
No.
So, yeah, so my number 3 is from Grand Gamers Guild. It's another Kickstarter game that I backed earlier this year. It's actually the first Kickstarter game that I backed, and it's Gorinto. And this one is an abstract strategy game, like I said, where you are shifting tiles based on the, I think, 4 elements. You might have the 5th element in there. I don't remember exactly. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but it's supposed to be coming out towards the beginning of the year. And I am really excited to have a slick looking, gorgeous design abstract strategy game that I can play solo.
I'll have to look into this. I've only ever heard the name of this, and I didn't really know anything about it. So yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that.
I think I saw someone post about it today, and I was like, "Ooh, what is that game?" So there you go.
Yeah.
Great. So then my number 2 is one that just left Kickstarter. There's been a wave this year of deck builder, worker placement combination kind of games. Both Arnak, Lost Temples of Arnak, I think it's called, and Dune Imperium, they both look great to me, but I'm not a huge deck builder fan unless I find the one that hits me the right way. And those seem to be more deck builder than worker placement, in that you're using the cards to dictate where you can place the pieces on the board. But this one, Endless Winter, is my second pick for the next year, seems to be slightly the other way. I've played it a couple times now on Tabletop Simulator in the solo mode. And it's cool because the workers you can place as you would in any other worker placement game. And where they are block spaces for other people, or not necessarily block spaces, but prevent the other player from getting bonuses from placing their pieces there. But the deck building works kind of like, say for example, Raiders of the North Sea has those cards that give you sort of special abilities that you can use in certain ways. And this sort of has that too, except now you're deck building. So those cards are going to come back 2 or 3 times in the game if they come shuffled back out. So when you're buying cards to add into a deck that then get shuffled through. And those cards are going to maybe give you stronger abilities when you activate one of the actions. It'll make the action easier to activate because you get more of these, I forget what they are, but icons that you need to activate the actions in the action spaces. Or some of them are culture cards, I believe, and those give you specific abilities that you can use to change a resource into another resource, or things along those lines. But this game has so much going on because it's worker placement and deck building to begin with. But then there's set collection when you're hunting for animals. There's this monument board where you're sort of stacking monuments and scoring based on how many monuments of your color on the top and how many monuments of your color are below that on the board, and you're scoring based on that. There's a sort of world map that you're doing sort of area control to unlock abilities on the spaces on that. And there's just so much going on. And it seems like it might be too much, but it really isn't. It all works really well together. And here we have the art from the Miko again, just like Viscounts and Paladins and these games we've already been talking about tonight. And I think this game looks wonderful as well. So I'm extremely excited about Endless Winter.
I almost backed this. Okay, no, I did back it. But then I mean, I loved everything about it, but it seemed like a game that it would be harder for me personally to get to the table more. And so instead, I canceled that and backed Creature Comforts. But I still, in my heart, really am excited about Endless Winter, and maybe one day I'll get it. But yeah, that loan looked phenomenal.
I mean, I'm in for
Yeah.
$1, but hopefully I don't have the money, but if I can sell a game, I will definitely be picking up a copy.
Well, you've got time.
Yeah, and we live close. So you have Creature Comforts, I have Endless Winter. We can always swap.
Okay, then never mind. We're good. All right. Number 2. Okay. So this is one that I am so looking forward to. I've only played this on Tabletopia, and I'm so excited to try the actual product. It has ridiculously adorable meeples. Like if you like the meeples from Root, these ones are even better. This game is Night Parade of 100 Yokai, and it's by Louis Brouet from Brouet Games. And I love everything about this. There's little tiles that you have set out that is your land, and it's area control and stuff, but you're trying to build up your own night parade, and you have 3 different lines of parades. And when you take your turn, you activate one of your parades, and that lets you know what you can do in that game. So you're trying to collect different yokai that give you powers, and you can also place meeples down on the tiles. And the point of that is you're trying to get enough of your meeples on certain tiles to be able to build a torii, and that's like a little gateway into the, I don't to remember the words, but a gateway to like the spirit world. There you go. And the first person to put out all 5 gateways to the tories triggers the end of the game, and then you count up all your points. But with this, when you're playing against an AI, you have different levels that you can do. You can do easy, medium, and hard. And on hard mode, you're playing against 2 AIs, and all of the different meeples, the different factions, if you want to call them, they have different abilities. So there are so many different ways to play this game and how to change it up. And I love that it's adorable, and you don't there's no writing on the cards. It's all like really easy to understand iconography. You could teach it to someone who doesn't know the same language as you and play it. And if you're one who really likes theme packed into it, he did his research on like Japanese lore. And if you know anything about the movie Spirited Away, when he was telling me about the game, I'm like, so is this like Spirited Away? But it's like way more of like the background of that. Like you don't always think about it when you're playing the game, but it's so cool and you can see some of it in the rule book. But I love this game. It looks adorable and it's so fun. And I got everything I could get for it.
I'm happy to hear good things about this. I spent 6 years in Japan as an English teacher, so it gets me sometimes when these Japanese themes are sort of pasted on just to be Asian kind of thing. So I'm very happy to hear that story. This is actually one I saw a long while back, and the theme and the art really caught my eye, and then I just sort of forgotten about it. And I saw you post recently about it, and I definitely need to look back at this one again.
No, yeah, it's definitely great. And he was kind of worried. He was hoping that, since he was going so far into like the Japanese lore, hoping people would like it. And he had a lot of people from Japan saying like this is great. So he did really well with getting that theme in there. And you can late pledge it, I think. So go do it.
That sounds awesome. My kids have been loving watching Spirited Away lately. So I'm going to check that out.
Do it.
All right. So my number 2 is a little bit of a cheat because it's actually 5 games, and it's from Thundergriff Games. It's another Kickstarter that I'm waiting on, and it should be here very soon. And it is the Matchbox collection. And so this one I added to my list because it's all small box games. It's just cards. You can take it with you anywhere, which is kind of a theme of games that I've really enjoyed from this year. So I'm pretty sure that I'm going to enjoy that again next year. Grab that box, pull it out. One of the games is solo only. It's just designed as a one-player game, and all of the rest of them will play solo. The components look amazing. I went all in on that one and got the player mats and the cute little meeples and the suitcase. So I'm looking forward to that one and trying out all 5 of those.
Nice. I
Nice.
kind of forgot about that one.
Yeah.
All right, so then my number one, this one is also semi a cheat because this is actually a game that's already released in China, but it's coming to Kickstarter on January 12th for an English language version of the game, and I did a preview for it. This is a dice placement game. It's called Ping Yao, First Chinese Bank. And when I first got the offer to do a review or preview of this, I sort of jumped at it because I'm a huge dice placement fan. I love worker placement. I love dice placement because not only am I placing workers, but the randomness of the dice means I have to come up with sort of tactics on the fly, and I really like that thinking space. But then after I jumped at it, I started thinking this is very historical. It's an economic kind of game. These are generally not themes that I'm really into. But I said I was going to do it, so I sat down and played. I read the rules. I wasn't sure, but then I saw a video about it that sort of explained the rules using the theme and explained why each action does what it does. And then everything sort of clicked and everything made a whole lot of sense. And yeah, so basically you're running banks in ancient China, and you're basically giving loans and taking loans. And there's an action called remittance, which is basically in ancient China, it was very dangerous to travel far distances with money. So if you had a company that had a branch somewhere far away, instead of carrying money to that branch, you deposit it in the bank where you were, and then they'd give you a receipt. And when you got to wherever the branch was, you trade that receipt for money at the bank branch in that location. So you're doing this remittance, sort of taking somebody's money, holding it to make interest on it and invest it in certain ways, and then paying it back out later, several rounds later in the game. And just this idea of how money flowing in and flowing out, but then also gaining interest while you're holding on to it, and building branches in different places so that you can get new abilities and do more of this remittance and these other kinds of actions. And just the unique way that the dice, when you place dice, you have to place them in order from highest number to lowest number. And in this case, the lowest numbers give you stronger actions. But when you place a die on a space, if there's a die that's already there, you can't place, you can't place the same number on a spot as a die that's already there. But any other die is fine, except if your number is higher than what's already there, then you receive money from the supply. And if your number is lower than that number that's there, you have to pay the difference to the supply. But again, in the multiplayer game, because you're placing from high number to low number, it's very rare that you'll ever be placing a number that's higher than something else, unless you pay money to re-roll your die and place it instantly. Otherwise, you're always placing low numbers after high numbers. But in the solo game, you're playing against an AI that basically seeds the board with dice at the beginning of every round. So it's already blocking off all the spaces. So there's a whole lot more opportunity for you to place those high numbers where low numbers are. So it's really cool that you can not only gain your income at the beginning of every round, but you can also, at the end of every round, but you can also make a ton of money based on good placement during the game or during your turns during the round. So you have to start to think about, do I want the stronger action or do I need the money, so I will place the higher number there? And it's a really cool thinking space. But on top of that, the solo game comes with these, what they call story cards. And every game you draw one story card. And that gives you the goals for the game. So maybe I need to build 3 level 3 branches, do 6 remittances, and score 30 points by the end of the game. But each time I play, that's going to be a completely different goal. And then there are also event cards. So every round, there's also a round goal that if I can hit that goal, I get something special. So maybe I get a free action that turn, or maybe I get an agent to place in one of my branches for free, or maybe I place one of my branches for free. And all of these things are triggered based on a round goal. And if you don't hit that goal by the end of the round, it's gone. You don't get to do it later in the game. So it sort of directs your ideas and your pathway as you're playing the game as well, which is great because there's so many ways to score points in this game. And I'm not the kind of person who sits down at the beginning of a game and says, I want to try this strategy. But when the goal says I have to try this strategy, I get to try out all kinds of different ways to play the game, and it really, really makes the game fun. So I'm looking forward to the Kickstarter coming, like I said, January 12th, very, very soon.
Nice. What kind of artwork does it have?
It looks sort of like an old Chinese painting, I guess. I don't know much about Chinese art, but sort of if you envision sort of an old Japanese woodblock painting kind of art, it's that. It's a Chinese map basically with different buildings, and each building is an action space.
Okay.
The dice are just colored dice because everybody has a different color, so they're not great, but you get 2 6-sided and 1 4-sided die. Because the 4-sided is actually special when you're calculating the difference between the numbers to pay or receive money. The 4-sided die is always counted as one number higher just for that difference calculation. But otherwise, the components, there are these wooden tokens for the agents, but they also give you metal coins that look like real Chinese currency, which is really cool. And they've got these, they're called saisis. It's basically like, if you think about a gold brick, that's what we use to keep money in storage. Apparently in ancient China, they use these things called saisis, and they're just like silver sculptures, basically. The ones in the game look like these little boats full of money, and they're really cool because they're all these little metal silver boats that are in the game.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah,
Definitely
that's one I
check it
hadn't
out.
heard of.
Yeah, I don't know that many have. I think I know my video will be going live at the end of this week, and I know that a lot of people are pushing videos in January for the campaign, so definitely check it out if you are interested.
Nice. Yeah, I think I've heard that in name only a few times, and now I know a little bit more about it. That's cool. Okay, my number 1 is a game that they don't even have a launch date yet, but I'm hoping it launches sometime next year in spring. And it's a game that, if you've looked at my Instagram at all, I can't stop talking about it. It is Oros, and it's by Brandt Brinkerhoff, and he's done like everything for it, like the art, the design, everything. It's all him. And this game looks, well, it plays phenomenal. And I would kind of equate it to like Paladins or Viscounts, where you have so many different choices on how you can level things up. And the theme of the game is you are a demigod and you're helping to like create the land, and you gain knowledge points. Those are like your victory points. And you have worshippers that you move and everything, and you try to construct like shrines and temples. And it is so fascinating how it all works together, because the people that you move one on your player board, and wherever you move that person to, that's the action you can take. So you have to be strategic with not blocking the places that you want to be using soon. And then on the land, you can have volcanoes and erupt them, and you form things, and you can shift tiles and orient them. And there's just so many choices, but I love it so much. And on your board, you can choose to like level certain things up, and that can get you extra actions or bonuses and how you can manipulate things. And it is fantastic. When you play solo, you have to play with 2 AI players at least, because you need 3 players for this game with just how it works. And they have different levels. So there's like an easier one, a more friendly one, and then you can range it all the way up to like crazy mean ones that like kick your worshippers off the land. And it's so crazy. And I cannot wait to try to play this with real meeples and like real tiles. It is so fantastic. And if anybody ever wants to play a game of Oros, I am always up for it, because you can play it on Tabletopia right now.
Yeah, I will definitely take you up on that. This is one that after I saw you post about it, I contacted the designer because I definitely want a chance. And I've read the rules and it looks really cool. I just haven't had a chance to get in and actually try it out yet. But the way that you sort of manipulate the board itself, it's sort of designed that it's a sphere. So things are like rotating and spinning, and it looks really complex, but also not complex at the same time, if that makes any sense. And
Yeah.
gorgeous components as well.
It takes a game to kind of be like, Oh, okay. But yeah, like you can rotate things, but you can rotate it around the board or across the board, and you don't think about all those options till someone does it, and you're like, oh, I can do that. Oh, well, darn. Okay, I'll do that next time.
That one sounds awesome. I hadn't heard about that, but I'm gonna see if I can get you to teach it to me.
Oh yeah, I totally will. Let's do a 3-player game.
There you go. Okay, so my number one, when Allison reached out and asked if I wanted to do this video with you guys, and she talked about ones you're looking forward to in 2021, I knew exactly what my number one was going to be. It was no doubt in my mind. And it is a expansion, actually, to an existing game by Funtails, which is Glenmore 2 Chronicles. And I am looking forward to the Glenmore 2 Highland Games expansion because it comes with the Automa Factory solo mode for Glenmore 2. And this is a game that originally, when I backed it on Kickstarter, I was going to just go all in and get the base game with the Kickstarter. And then I went, no, I can't wait until 2021 to get the base game. So I canceled that and went ahead and got a copy of the base game this year. And it was one that I couldn't wait for multiplayer. And I just pulled it out and played me against me on the game to see how it played. And I really am looking forward to the solo mode. I love the Automa Factory solo modes that come out. It looks very similar to Viticulture, which I enjoy, where the Automa has a card that they turn over every turn. It tells you what tiles they're going to pull, where they're going to go, and from what I understand, it will work with most of the additional Chronicle expansions that are in the base game and the new ones in the Highland games as well. So we'll be playing a lot of Glenmore 2 next year.
Very cool. This is one that I hadn't really heard anything about, but recently I've started looking into Johnny Pack, his games, and I think he's doing one of the Chronicles. There's guys throwing stones and throwing like cabers or something, and the little meeples with the kilts on and the holding. It looked really, really cool.
Yep.
And also, I have to say, you're 100% correct on the Automa Factory. Morton and his crew are amazing, and I love all of the AIs that they've done. I mean, we already talked about Viticulture earlier tonight, but yeah. I haven't been disappointed with any of their stuff yet.
That's a game where, like, every time I see the cover, I'm like, oh, that just looks gorgeous. And then I never look into it. And so now I'm like, okay, I wrote it down and see if I can remember to look into it because that sounds cool. And plus, Meeples with kilts, that's really awesome.
Yeah, when I got the game, I mean, the base game, the box is just huge, and there is so much content in there. And you've got all your little Scotsmen, and they've got their little kilts on, which some people don't put those on, but I was like, how can you have a Scotsman with no kilt? So I definitely put the stickers on mine, but there's a lot in there, and it took a long time to get that sorted out and all put together, but it's totally worth it. I love the rondelle mechanic, and I'm excited to see how the Automa handles that and steals those tiles you're looking for.
I now put a star next to it, so there you go.
And you will put the kilts on.
Yes, I will.
Yes, put the kilts on.
Yeah, well, there we go. That's top 5 and 5, and we didn't have any crossovers. That's 30 new games for you to check out if you haven't already. That's great. I do have one quick honorable mention for the things coming forward. This one didn't go on my list because it's not a game, but it comes from a game company, and that's Inside the Box Games. They may be best known for their Subterra games, but they have a book that's coming out on Kickstarter. It was supposed to come out at the end of last year, but it's been pushed, and I think it's going to be hitting Kickstarter in January of this coming year. Basically, it's sort of like a choose your own adventure book, but it's more sort of novel based. So each chapter is a location that you can go to, and depending on what you do in the story, you're unlocking different chapters or unlocking different locations on the map. You're finding items, you're like building different skills and things that you can maybe use later on when the choices come up at the end of a section, and it says, if you have this item, you can do this, or if you have this skill, you can do this. Otherwise, choose from these 5 things. But it was really, I did a preview for it, and it was really amazing to me how, regardless of the choices I made, it was telling a story. I was reading a novel. It wasn't it wasn't a choose your own adventure where you choose the wrong thing and you instantly die and it's over. There is no insta death in the middle of the book. It always comes to some kind of conclusion. There's just different endings depending on what you've done. The other thing, I did the preview based on the beta version of their digital version of the book, but the physical copy that's going to be coming out on Kickstarter is going to come with a full map and stickers, kind of like in Gloomhaven, where every time you unlock something, you
Nice.
put the location on, and it just looks really, really cool. So I'm excited about that. Even if it's not a game, it sort of has some gamey aspects to it. So I thought it was worth mentioning.
That's cool. Well, then, real quick, I have an honorable mention. This is Canvas, and it should be arriving hopefully next month. It was supposed to come by Christmas, but everything happening.
Right.
It's, if you know, like Mystic Vale, where you have like the clear cards that you kind of craft together. It's like that, but you're making a painting, and so like you put it together and you have a painting. And when you have the solo mode, well, and regular mode too, you're trying to get certain achievements and stuff, and like different little ribbons and everything. And it just looks like a gorgeous, approachable little game. And I like painting, and to have a game about painting where you're making an actual painting just sounds so cool. And they give you like little easels and everything. I went all in for this because, but it just seems like a really fun game that I can play solo, but I can also teach it to others as well.
Yeah, that was one I almost backed. It looks really good for sure.
I'll let you know soon, hopefully.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys for joining me for this. It was fun to do my first top 10 list, and a whole lot less painful to do with other people doing it with me. So again, thank you for joining. If you would like to take a minute and let everybody know where they can find you and your stuff, that would be great.
So you can find me on Instagram at Better Half Reviews, and then we have a YouTube channel, Better Half Reviews, and like I mentioned earlier, I have my own little solo half reviews. So if you want to do more solo gaming, you can check that out, or if you want to see what me and my husband do, we talk about lots of other games as well.
Great.
Awesome. Like I said, I'm Allie. I am from the family Meeple. You can find us mainly on Instagram. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and you can find our blog with full reviews and top 5, top 10 lists at familymeeple.com.
Great. And I'll throw a couple of links down below for a bunch of that stuff as well. So you can check down below and just click through to some of those things. Great. So again, thank you for joining me for these lists, and thank all of you for watching. I hope you found some games that you didn't know about and you're going to have some fun playing. Again, solo gaming may not be for everybody, but it is for a lot more people than you expect it to be. So if you haven't done any solo gaming, definitely try it out, especially locked in the house with coronavirus world as we have right now. It's a great way to have some fun and relax at the end of the day. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.